Facebook has been doing all the wrong stuff, because the next story we have is actually also about Facebook, but it's a whole other story about Facebook that broke yesterday, which is Facebook faces the biggest legal battle in years as U.S. officials launch lawsuit. So it's featured on The Guardian. U.S. regulators and 48 attorney generals are limbering up for what promises to be the biggest legal battle against a U.S. company in decades. So the New York Attorney General is spearheading one of 2 lawsuits against Facebook, alleging that the social network abuses its dominance and monopoly power to crush smaller rivals, to snuff out competition, and all at the expense of everyday users. So basically, they're using dirty tactics to create a monopoly, and that serves the user poorly, because we all know that in an open market with competition, only the best solution survives, right? That's basically the thesis of it. So they're facing a big lawsuit. Mark Zuckerberg, according to internal sources, is taking it pretty cool. He's saying that it will not have any impact on individual or team roles. He's saying we disagree with the government's allegations and we plan to fight this in court. We compete with many other services in everything we do, and we do it completely fairly. So they're being attacked on a lot of fronts. And I think, honestly, it reminds me a little bit of the O.J. Simpson case.
What is that?
So O.J. Simpson was a murder case, I want to say in the early 90s or 80s, where the very famous O.J. Simpson was accused of killing his wife. And it's like, he did it. Like, he did it. Hands down, he did it. And they couldn't pin it on him. And then they ended up getting him for something on his tax return or something like that. What? So they're like, he did something wrong and everybody knew it. You gotta watch, there's this documentary about the trial. They did some really fucking shady shit in it.
Okay, for those who doesn't know, Sarah's crazy about stuff like that.
Yeah. So, but I think the philosophy here is not really about OJ. I think he also published a book later that was called, like, If I Did It, This Is How. So, But anyways, there tends to be a universal karma, or just police that really want to fuck you up if you fuck other people up, that will get you eventually. That's kind of how I feel about Facebook. Facebook's done a lot of shit. I still haven't seen Facebook pay for the whole Pizzagate shit. People still believe that Biden is a pedophile, like, because of stories you can only trace back to Facebook. So is he a pedophile? I don't think so, but honestly, nobody really knows. But the point is, no credible source has ever documented anything that suggested, other than, stories you can't trace to an original source on Facebook. They've never had to answer for that, and it's the same we're seeing with Twitter. Like, if someone incites someone to act violently, like, who's really responsible? And these social networks have had this ability to say, we're here for the greater good, to create common spaces where everyone can do whatever they want to do. But what that also brings with it is not just violence. 5 persons died in the incident at the Capitol. But it's also facilitating environments where child pornography is being distributed, revenge and hate porn. Like, there's a lot of shit that's happening through there that's not okay. And eventually, I think that they do have to answer for it. Then, at the same time, I'm also not a fundamentalist. I think a lot of the debate that's been happening in the United States the last week has been about whether Donald Trump tried to stage a coup. And to me, that's ridiculous. Because obviously he didn't. Because if you think that that's a coup, then you need to go back in your history book and look up some basic definitions. And I brought a definition because I'm not a walking dictionary. But if you think back historically, we're all kinds of, we're sort of, we can see from the demographics that we're sort of similar in age. But any coup that I have witnessed in my lifetime has always been carried out by people in power, like an elite or the military. So if you think about that, when people who feel disenfranchised storm the Capitol, that is not a coup because it's not organized. it's a siege of the capital where persons take over a space. But if something is a coup, I think also it's called coup d'etat, right? Like taking over a state, stealing the state. It always involves the organization of some sort of military or police that will forcibly take it. So, for example, it's actually defined in an article on The Conversation called "Was It a Coup?" And it states essentially there are 3 parameters that you use to judge whether an insurrection is a coup event. And that's a definition shared by the coup expert, which is also like a very cool job title, right? Called Jonathan Powell and Clayton Thine. And they say the first thing to be aware of is that are the perpetrators agents of the state, such as military officials or rogue government officials? 2, is the target of the insurrection the chief executive of the government? And 3, do the plotters use illegal or unconstitutional methods to seize executive power? And I think you could probably discuss 2 and 3, but number 1, this was not organized by government officials, and there was no police or military involvement.
Which automatically means that there wasn't a defined target to what they were doing.
I mean, I think that they had a defined target in the sense that they wanted to stop Biden from coming into office. But I think there's a really big difference between using social media to incite anger and have someone commit violent acts against a building or persons, or plotting with the head of the military to, for example, assassinate people in power in order for someone to take over, power. I don't think that's the same thing. Anybody who knows me know I have no desire to see Donald Trump ever again. But I just think that as a flaming socialist, we do have to keep some sort of proportionality in our arguments, because I think having this black and white view of the world is not getting us anywhere. And if I, as one of the, I cried when Donald Trump was elected. I still have like a picture of Hillary on my wall right here, okay? But I think it is people like me that have to keep the debate in check. Because I really, from the beginning, have said, to me, this does not look like a coup event, such as the coups we have seen, for example, in Iran. It is not at all where the CIA came in with bags of money and organized things. It's not the same thing.